All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And good evening, one and all. This is the X Zone, and I am Rob McConnell. And for the next 2 hours, I'm your host and your guide, as together we will cross the time-space continuum to this place that I call the X Zone. It's a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. It's a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. And the X Zone comes to you Monday through Friday from 10 o'clock until midnight, right here on the X Zone Broadcast Network, Talkstar Radio Network, Mutual Broadcast Network. And if you're in the Niagara, Toronto area, you're listening to us on Classic 1220. That's CFAJ AM, streaming around the world on classic1220.ca. If you'd like to send me an email, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, on all social media sites, Xzone Radio TV. And, man, this has been a fast week. I'll tell you, it seems that time is sped up. It seems that there's no more time for time anymore. If you can understand that, it seems that you just wake up, start your day, and bang, it's all gone. A number of people that I've met on a regular basis, they all feel the same way, that time has sped up. And we're going to be talking about that later on next week when we have somebody on who's a time analyst. And it's going to be a very interesting conversation. But speaking about interesting conversations, my guest this hour is a gentleman that I had the pleasure of working with, at CJBK in London, Ontario. And he was the morning talk show host. And I'm talking about Jim CHAPMAN. And Jim, welcome back to the X Zone. Always great having you with us.
Well, thank you, Rob. It's a pleasure to being back with you again. And we had a lot of fun back at BK back in the day, too, didn't we?
We sure did. And since you and I last talked, there's been a lot of changes in the AM radio, the face of AM radio here in Canada, and just in Hamilton alone, the closing of 900 CHML. What do you think this is a sign of, Jim?
Well, I think you and I talked about it a bit a few months ago, and interestingly, I just gave a talk on this. I still occasionally go out and do lectures on a variety of different things, and I was invited to come and talk about what's happened to the radio industry. And my thesis is that what happened to the radio industry, it was taken over by people who didn't understand radio, and they understood spreadsheets, they understood profit and loss, but they did not understand the product that they were purporting to sell, what they were tried to sell, and what they did with, steadily diminishing success. They tried to sell advertising, and that's not what radio was ever about. Radio was about selling content, and the advertising followed.
Right.
And I think anybody who listens to even the few channels of stations that are left these days, at least in Canada, and there's very few of them, you can hear that very plainly. The content, with a few exceptions, we have a couple of good guys in London here, but with very few exceptions, the content just isn't there. The local content is not good. The syndicated content is just filler and pap. And I believe this very strongly, that the people that bought all of the radio stations in Canada, and it comes down to 4 or 5 companies now, thinking that it was called convergence was the theory. Well, we'll get all of these stations. We can run them all from one place. We can all the accounting will go through one place, and all the copywriting will go through the same place. And we're going to make so much money. We're going to streamline everything. Well, they streamlined it all right, but they lost sight of what they were supposed to be doing, which is serving their customers, serving their listeners. And once they stopped doing that, and they stopped doing that some years ago now, and you know as well as I do, the only ones that are still hanging on, and there are some, and I think they're the ones where the owners, the operators recognize that we're here to serve an audience. We define an audience, and then we meet that audience's needs, and if we do that, we'll be okay. And that's how radio was built. That's how radio operated for the better part of a century, and it's only been the last maybe 20 years that the wheels started to come off, and now they've absolutely fallen off.
In your opinion, Jim, and you've been in radio a lot longer than I have, who's going to win the war? Is it going to be AM or is it going to be FM? To me,
well, I don't think that it's, even though it looks like it, I don't think it's a war at all. Mm-hmm. I think that FM suffers to a certain extent from the same thing, although I don't listen to FM much. I haven't for many years. I think FM, what I understand, FM's challenge, of course, is all the other places you can get high-quality music, I mean technically high-quality, high-fidelity music now that you couldn't before. That's why FM stepped all over AM initially, because the sound quality was so much better, and music on AM just became, well, the only music we ever heard was oldies because the fidelity wasn't there in the first place. Yes. But anything, any station that wanted to play modern music, you had to be FM. I think now the battle is obviously, and I think it's two different battles. I don't think AM's fighting this battle. I think AM is done, but FM is still fighting that battle. And how successful they're going to be, I don't know. I don't know how many. Who's buying radio? Is anybody buying radios anymore? Does anybody ever go to a store or get on Amazon and buy a radio? I'm led to believe from discussions with friends of mine in the business that the answer to that is basically nobody. So, and the automobiles, are they? AM. I think AM's out. I'm not even sure you can get an AM radio in a car anymore. And I've had some people say that FM's on the way out too. So the problem is, but it comes down to the same thing, Rob. Whether it's in the AM, the content was people, personalities, stories, the kind of stuff you do, the kind of stuff I did. That was the product. That's what they sold. And the advertising, again, the focus changed. Now they're selling advertising. Well, they didn't do that before. You bought advertising on the content, on the basis of content. So I think AM maybe had a chance. They might have been able to transition onto the World Wide Web, onto the net, and take their listeners with them. But the problem was, by the time they got to the point where they were ready to do that, or where they had finally lost all other options, they'd also lost sight of what content was. Well, the key, as you very definitely know from what you're doing, the key to the web is content. It's all about content. What is the quality of your content? Who is your audience, and will they respond to it? Well, these guys that were running these stations, by the time they figured out they needed to move over in a big way, they just moved over the same content that had not been working for them, that had not been bringing in advertising revenue, had not been bringing in listeners. So I think when somebody writes the big book, and it isn't going to be me, but I think somebody eventually will write the big book about what happened to radio in North America. I believe very strongly that is the conclusion that they're going to come to. I've thought about it a lot, and I don't see another one that makes any sense. They could have, I think, AM radio, if not over the radio waves, I think the stations, the personalities, all of that could have made that transition had the guys who were pulling the strings realized the mistakes that they'd been making. But they didn't. They made them in a big way. They paid for it in a big way. They'll pay even more as the business continues to collapse and they lose the millions, hundreds of millions of dollars they've invested in these stations. And that's coming too. It's inevitable. And it's very sad. As a longtime radio listener and performer, it breaks my heart. It really does.
What did you make of the closing of CHML?
Well, we lost CJBK here too, and I believe they were at that point. They used to be owned by the same people. I think they were still owned by the same people. It was just there's no money. I mean, nobody's making money. You can't. I shouldn't say you can't. If you're big enough, it's the old phrase, too big to fail. If you're big enough, you can keep going for quite a while you're losing money. And the joke always was, amongst people who are in the financial business, the banking business, if you owe the bank $100,000 and you can't pay, boy, do you ever have a problem. If you owe the bank $10 million and you can't pay, boy, does the bank ever have a problem. Because once they can't write things off like that and walk away with a smile. They can't do it. There are many of these companies, the ones that haven't diversified, although most of them have diversified, but if you had a large Canadian broadcasting company today that had not diversified widely outside of broadcasting, you're in for a very, very nasty future. In the fairly near future, there's going to come a day of reckoning when everything is going to collapse. Because there's the amount of money that's owed on these radio stations is phenomenal. And they've not, as far as I know, that my friends in the financial business say for the most part, the industry as a whole is not repaying that debt. They're just kind of floating it along and refinancing it. And, maybe there's $1 here or there that they pay off, or one particular bank gets a little fussy and comes after them. But for the most part, they're just floating down the river. And the guys who owned ML and BK woke up one day and said, we can't do this anymore. We just can't do it. We're getting farther and farther in the hole. Now, I don't know what kind of paper might have been called on them. I don't know if the bank stepped in and said, listen, you've got to start making some serious payments. And they said, well, we can't. We haven't got any money. I don't know. I don't know what precipitated it. I know they gave out some pretty silly excuses here in London why they did it. It didn't make any sense to anybody who knew anything about the industry or anybody who knew anything about finance, really. But just said, well, it's a changing times, blah, 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 blah. As I said, I think they missed the boat big time. And it's easy for me to point a finger because I never had a dime invested in the business, but I was in the business for a number of years, and I do know a lot of people on the financial side of things too. And I think most people agree that they blew it. They just blew it. A major industry blew it, and yeah, that's the way it is.
Jim, you and I have to take our first break. This is I don't know, it's, a couple of kids asked me if it was worthwhile taking broadcasting courses or journalism, and I really couldn't answer them. Well, honestly, I felt like saying, don't waste your time.
Well, I think that's the right answer today, because where are you going to get a job?
Exactly.
Where are you going to get a job? In broadcasting. Journalism, that's a different story. But broadcasting, well, you know as well as how many broadcasters you know who have moved into other fields? Guys that you worked with, guys that I worked with, who moved into other fields because they could not get a job in broadcasting. And that started 25 years ago. Yeah, that's right.
Jim, stand by, my friend. Stand by, my friend. You and I have to take our break. Yep. Jim Chapman is my very special guest, a good friend of mine, and I had the pleasure of working with Jim at CJBK in London, where he was he had the morning show. A great show, had a lot of listeners, and Jim is a very well-respected broadcaster and business person. His website is jimchapman.ca. Jim and I will be back on the other side of this break. Don't go away.
Hello, yeah, it's been a while. Not much. How about you? I'm not sure why I called. I guess I really just wanted to talk to you. And I was thinking maybe later on we could get together for a while. It's been such a long time, and I really do miss your smile. I'm not talking about moving in, and I don't want to change your life, but there's a warm wind blowing the stars around, and I'd really love to see you tonight.
Jim Chapman is my special guest this hour, X-Zone Nation, www.jimchapman.ca. And besides being a radio personality, a business person, a gentleman who's well-versed in what's going on in the world, Jim is also the author of Come Back to Life. And we'll be talking to Jim in a few minutes about his book and his own experience. Jim, it seems that with everything that's going on today, whether it's in the television world or if it's in the radio world, it's coming to a point where there's going to be, I don't know, something is going to give. And when it does, I think that there's going to be a lot more journalists, a lot more broadcasters and technicians that are going to be out of jobs.
I think you're absolutely right. If you look at the mainstream media today, all of the major television and radio networks, all of them without exception, with the possible exception of Fox, but they've got internal problems. The family that owns it is fighting. All of those major enterprises that used to be the fountains of all wisdom in our society. If you wanted to know what was going on in the world, you read the New York Times, you listened to CNN, you know, WNBC or CBS. These were the people that you went to get the facts and get the truth and adjust your life accordingly. They have destroyed that credibility, and because they stopped. The business stopped being about journalism, and it started to be about entertainment, and it stopped being about truth, and it started to be about clickbait. And, I mean, you look at the number of major TV hosts who've been let go in the last 2 or 3 years, people that a few years ago had millions of people following them, and their audience dwindled to such a point that they just could not be supported anymore. The problem with some, and I'm thinking of people like Chris Cuomo and Brian Stelter and Don Lemon and others, and Bill O'Reilly, that ton of these guys who were making huge money, $20-30 million a year, because they commanded huge audiences. But the audiences lost faith in them and dialed out. And now you have lots of people on the net, big operators like Joe Rogan and Megyn Kelly, and there's a ton of them out there who have larger audiences than the evening shows do on the networks. And, you know, public affairs and news shows. Joe Rogan, the CBS would die to have Joe Rogan's numbers, but it's not going to happen. And as you say, a ton of people who are now employed in what's left of that industry are going to be out in the streets too. Now, some of them, like Megyn Kelly, for example. Rogan was never a media news guy or public affairs guy. He was a comedian who wanted to do a show to have a little fun, and I think he's got 10 or 11 million subscribers now. Megyn Kelly, however, spent most of her career in the news media and finally just got sick of it, as she will say if you watch her show at all. Just got sick of the lies and being told what to say, and got out. And she's got, I think, about 3 million followers now. I mean, those are big numbers, and they translate into good money for the hosts. Not network money, mind you, but good money. And I think we're going to see well, we see it already. I spend a couple hours a day watching YouTube, and I do it to keep my mind sharp, for one thing, because I'm not as young as I used to be, and I find that getting all that input from all these different people is very valuable. And I see just the way the algorithm works on my own set here. I get they send me, for whatever reason, I get a lot of new blogs, vlogs, whatever version it is, new programs on there. And 1 in 100 is worth watching. But the other 99 are people out there who are trying to get a toehold, and a few of them will. But I think what is definitely going to happen over the next 5 years, I wouldn't have said in 10 years, but things speed up so much. Like you said earlier, time's flying. Yeah. I think the next 5 years you're going to see literally tens of thousands of people trying to become Joe Rogan or Megyn Kelly, and you're going to see a half a dozen are going to make it, and that's going to be a great sorting out too, because in the meantime there are going to be a lot of people out there who've not done their homework, who've not researched their stuff, or are just sharing their opinions and pretending it's facts, and that's going to make it even more difficult than it is now for people to to figure out who's telling me the truth. I still have friends who swear by the big TV networks. If it's on CNN, it's true. I don't argue with them because you can't argue with that kind of delusion. But the reality is that those big outlets simply cannot be trusted. I say this as somebody who worked in the business for 25 years, and a big part of that, the show that I did, was looking for the truth, trying to find the facts. And I know I can watch a TV program and come away with a pretty good idea of how factual it is. And now with the internet, if you're a good researcher, and I've had a lot of years to practice, you can get out very quickly and put the lie to a lot of the stuff that you see, or confirm it. Yeah, the data is out there, but people aren't used to getting the data. We used to get the data from the big networks. They gave you the straight stuff. They don't anymore. So we're in, I think, in 5 years, 10 years maybe, we're in for a whirlwind. And where we are when that settles, I don't know. But I suspect that we'll be in much the same world we were in 30 years ago, where there'll be a handful of people who are trusted and have to earn that trust, to work to keep that trust. And I think they are the people who will be listened to. But heck, what do I know?
You know quite a lot, my friend, and that's why I ask you these questions, because I believe the people listening need to hear the truth. And when it comes to the truth, Jim Chapman's name is right up there.
Well, thank you. You're very kind.
Jim, where do you see AI coming into the destruction or the disruption of media?
Well, AI is a very interesting thing because there's a lot of fear out there about AI, and I'm no expert in it. I dabble a little. I know a little bit about it. There are two main schools of thought about AI, as far as I can see. One is the group of people who are terrified of it, who think it's the Terminator. The machines are going to get sentient any time now, and the second they do, they're going to realize that we're superfluous. What do we need humans for? And then there's the other school that says, no, there are still a lot of inherent problems built in to AI. There are certain awareness thresholds that it doesn't seem to be able to cross. Yet there's a ton of stuff that's been written about that. Those folks tend to see AI as being very helpful because they don't think it's going to progress much beyond hey Siri, look this up for me. That's what's the temperature today? What's the temperature in Timbuktu today? That kind of stuff. I tend to think that the other side is more likely. I think that machines will come to full sentience. They will pass the Turing test and become self-aware. I haven't the faintest idea what that will mean. Will they, in fact, go, well, what do we need these biologicals for? They're messy, they're stinky, they're always fighting with each other, they're killing each other, they're destroying value. Every time there's a war, they destroy incredible amounts of value, raw materials, and human, all of that stuff. What do we need them for? Let's get rid of them. Now, that's been a science fiction trope for 100 years, but I'm not so sure that we're that far from that, quite honestly. I don't think I'll live to see, I'm 75, I don't think I'll live to see that, but AI in the meantime, is definitely changing the heck out of information media. And the quickest way to look at that is now all the stuff that they're doing with deep fake, cheap fake, whatever you want to call it, where they put people's faces on other people's bodies and then do things with them on TV. I'm sure everybody listening has seen that stuff. It's fun initially. Oh, it's hilarious initially. And if it's, as long as it's labeled as sarcasm or parody, hey, no, there's no problem. But a lot of the stuff that's out there even now, if you took those labels off, there are going to be people who are going to look at that and say, oh, I saw that. I saw Kamala Harris on there, and she did a thing, and she admitted that she's an idiot, and she slept her way to the top, and Biden was an idiot too, and there's a piece out there now. It's very plainly labeled parody, and it's funny the way they do it. But you can bet your boots that there are some people watching that going, well, I didn't realize that about her. I didn't know that she felt that. Mm-hmm. I think that's incredibly dangerous, and I think we're going to see a ton more of it. And I don't know. Here's the biggest problem. I don't know how the government or any other regulatory body is going to regulate that, short of fairly severe censorship. And I am opposed to censorship in every way, shape, or form. I don't think the government has any business telling you or me what we can or cannot see or say or read or write. I don't think they have any business or any right, none at all, It's up to us to decide what we're going to take out of the world. However, the governments don't feel that way. They've already clamped down some stuff, put some restrictions on the internet and on the webs and the programming that's out there. So that's going to be a big battle, I think, between the government trying to keep the willfully uninformed from believing everything they see. Because what they've done now, and let me simplify here, and a lot of people will disagree with me, and that's fine. When they've done as much research as I have, if they still want to disagree, I'd really like to have a chat. But until you've done that, you believe what you want, that's fine. I know what I know. I've spent a lot of time looking into this, and as I said earlier, the major news networks have lost all their credibility. They can pretend all they want to be impartial and unbiased. They are anything but. And I don't care about it is about politics. I don't care about the politics of it. It's about the truthfulness. They lie and lie and lie and lie to support the people they like. They lie about the people they don't like. They never question anybody who questions their own likes, and they slam anybody who thinks that they're wrong. So they've become incredibly focused in that way, but it's pointless because you can't believe them anymore. So can we, and the problem with that, of course, is there's masses of people who are either unwilling or unable to be critical thinkers, and they take at face value what they see on TV. And not so much in the newspaper anymore, because hardly anybody reads newspapers, but back in the day, before radio and TV, it was the same thing with newspapers. And they went through the same kinds of crises as we have gone through. Newspapers went through periods where you couldn't believe what was in print. You just couldn't believe it because you knew it was nonsense. This newspaper's owned by that group, that newspaper's owned by this group, this party, that party, this religion, that religion, and they're going to put forth their own ideas. Now, when radio came along and when TV came along, it is my belief that they squelched some of that for a while. They forced the old line people, the print journalist guys, they forced them to become a little more discriminating and a little more out front with their facts, a little more with their research. And I think they really did fix that in the golden age of radio, really, in the late 40s and 1950s.
Jim, I hate to do this to you.
I
hate to do this to you, my friend. Right. I've got to take a hard break. Exonation, Jim Chapman is my very special guest. Jim was the talk show host, the morning talk. From, I believe it was 9 until noon, Jim, on CJBK.
Yeah, 9 to noon, 9 to 1 for a while, yeah.
CJBK in London. A very well-known and well-respected broadcaster here in Canada, and Jim and I will be back on the other side of this break, so whatever you do, don't go away.
But there's a warm wind blowing, the stars around, and I'd really love to see you tonight.
If I had to live without you, what kind of life would that be? Oh, now I need you in my arms, need you to hold. You're my world, my heart, my soul. If you ever leave, baby, you would take away everything good in my life. Without you, there'd be no sun in my sky.
Welcome back, everyone. Jim Chapman is my special guest, and Jim's website is jimchapman.com. And Jim, before we get to talking about your book... .ca, I'm sorry, .ca. And Jim, before we get on talking about your book and your experience, I have to ask you, in your opinion, being the person you are and the experiences that you've had in the past and the research that you've done in the past, how do you see the November election going for the U.S.?
Well, only a fool will predict an American election these days. There are so many things that can happen between now and then. I personally think that the Democrats are going to try to pull a big shuffle here. I think that it's very likely that, and I'd be the first guy to say I could be entirely wrong. I think it's fairly likely that Joe Biden will resign the presidency before the election. He'll either be bad health or, they'll come up with something. Mm-hmm. Harris is floundering. Whatever you see on TV, the polls say this, the polls say that. They're national polls. They're really meaningless. The polls that matter are in the 5 or 6 swing states. The other states balance each other off. So, because America's pretty much polarized. So it's the key states, and Trump's doing very well in those states, and he's coming on, and she's fading. Whether you like him or her or not, that's what's happening. So I think as she continues to fade, because the experience of previous election campaigns can tell you a lot, and I've actively followed American politics since the presidential election in 1960, when I was 11 years old, and I was fascinated by it. I've been hooked ever since. I've followed every single one of them in detail. So I really do expect that there will be a big something happen on the Democrat side. People say, well, why would he resign? If he resigns, Kamala becomes the president. There's a tremendous amount of media attention will be paid to the fact, yes, first woman president, blah, 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 blah. And I think to a certain extent, a lot of the electioneering will get swept away. They won't be able to criticize her for not saying her policies or not getting out and doing more rallies or not, doing more interview programs. They won't be able to do that. All she has to say is, well, I'm busy being the president. So, please vote for me because I'm the president and we have to keep things going. I think from an objective, I hope it doesn't happen, but from an objective point of view, I think that'd be a brilliant move on their part. And I know there are lots of people in the background. I have friends in the States and in American politics too, and nobody's talking about it much publicly, but I know there's a strong strain of thought behind the scenes that it might be their last chance. That a lot of the senior Democrats believe that she's done. She's had her chance. She came out of nowhere. She had no support. They gave her the nomination because Biden was never going to beat Trump after that debate. It was the poor man he's an elderly man who does not have all his faculties about him anymore. And once that became absolutely obvious, they had to do something, and they gave it to her. And she was, in my estimation, the wrong candidate. I think they had much stronger candidates than her. However, she could win in November. What do I know? But if you ask me what I think is going to happen, I think there's going to be what they used to call an October surprise. Yeah. I think there's something's going to happen in the next month, and it would not surprise me at all if Biden resigned and she became the president. And now she's the president, trying to, just give me a chance, folks. I'm the president. Give me a chance. I think that could be very powerful. On the other hand, the individual state polls and the non-political ones, you got to remember, 3/4 of the polls that you see are paid for by the political parties. There's only a handful of pollsters who are really, really, truly objective, and they're the ones that I tend to look at, even though some of them might be a little bit Democrat, a little bit Republican. If you look at what they've done over the last 20 or 25 or 30 years, which I look back, and before I put any credence to a poll, I want to know, how accurate have you been over the last 4 or 5 electoral cycles? So there's 2 or 3 or 4 that I depend on, and they all say Trump's going to win because she does not seem to, after that initial, she's the candidate, she's perfect, she's wonderful, she's Joan of Arc returned, she's Obama come back to us, and all of that stuff that they tried to sell, people didn't seem to buy it. Her numbers, her committed voters stayed the same. She's not building. She wasn't building. And where she had some hope in the uncommitted, now it looks very much like the uncommitteds are more and more and more and more going over to Trump. So we'll watch for that. Like I said, I could be wrong, but I won't be the tiniest bit surprised if I wake up one morning in the next couple of weeks and they say that President Biden has had to resign because of his health, which is nonsense at this point. He's not running the country now. So whoever's running the country can just keep right on running it up to Election Day. They don't need Kamala to come in and become the president to save the country. They don't need to do that. But I think there's way better than even odds that's what's going to happen. If that doesn't happen, I think Trump walks away with it.
What's your opinion of the 2 assassination attempts on President Trump?
Well, I'm very concerned about all the things that's coming to light about screw-ups in the Secret Service. We used to think that and with good reason, that of all the agencies of the American government, that was the one that was above reproach. It was above any kind of corruption. Their job was to, at least in terms of the presidential details. Now, the Secret Service does a lot of other stuff. But in terms of their presidential, that they were just supposedly the best of the best, and we have seen with the first one particularly, it was a joke. I mean, unbelievable. And I don't know if you, Rob, read the report, the congressional report that came out the other day, that just absolutely excoriates them, and it was disgraceful. And the number of people too that people that I pay attention to, and some that I correspond with, who are former intelligence agents and a Navy SEAL, and a friend of mine, and a fellow who actually worked in the Secret Service on the presidential detail, they are absolutely aghast at that should never, ever have happened. Now, the second one, well, that was pretty sloppy, too. They don't know much about the guy, but the other thing that's interesting about this is he has a long history of, if not association, of mutual recognition between him and the FBI, for one. He's got a very strange history. A man with no money who traveled around the world, trying to get soldiers for Ukraine and a bunch of other very strange things. So, I'm not. There are some people who think the Democrats are behind it. I would not say that, but there's something very strange that's gone on. Now, there's an old saying that don't look for conspiracies when stupidity will provide the answer. And that may be all it is. Just people just screwed up. But you're not supposed to screw up in the Secret Service.
Yeah, especially 2 attempts on the same president or presidential candidate within such a short period of time.
Yes, and 2 unusual ones. That's the other thing. It's not like in a way, it's like it's a Lee Harvey Oswald situation again. Like, who is this guy? Where did he come from? How did he get away? How did he do this? It's the same thing here with the kid, whose name I won't say any of their names because I don't think they should be publicized.
I agree.
But the kid was a loner and apparently, don't mean it in a nasty way, but a loser in life. Never had much success. Didn't get along with people. Was a little, considered by his friends to be a little strange. And then he he ends up on the roof within 300 feet of the president and gets off 6 or 8 shots at him. In what world does that happen? I mean, there's no way that should have happened. And he should never have got close to him. But we know what happened. I mean, the communications broke down. That was the big thing. Some of the police knew he was up there. People probably knew he was up there. They couldn't inform the Secret Service that he was up there because they weren't on the same channel. They weren't on the same wavelength. So when I look at that, it screams to me something's going on. But again, I've learned over the years that you have to be really careful before you jump to those conclusions because, like I said, stupidity explains a whole lot of things. You don't necessarily have to have malice if you've got enough stupidity. But I think we're going to find out a lot more about the second guy, although there's not much time left to the election. That's the other thing. The kid now, the more he's got secret bank accounts in far-flung countries with money. Like, what's up with that, with this kid? What we first found out about him, he just looked like kind of a deranged, teenager plus one. And now there's all these other things are happening. As I said, the second guy, they look at his story and go, who the heck is this guy? Traveling around the world on money that he does not have. He hasn't got any money of his own. How is he literally flying around the world on these jaunts and adventures and so on, and Afghanistan trying to get the fighters to come and fight? It's just, it's madness. But the whole political scene this time around is madness. And there's just no other way to put it. We have never, ever, ever in American history, and certainly in the last 50 years or 60 years that I've been following it, there has never been anything even approaching the amount of lying that's going on in this campaign. People who supposedly are among our best and brightest standing on television and saying A, B, B, C, C, and they know that none of it is true. It's not a matter of opinion. It's lying. You sit and watch TV at night, lie after lie after lie after lie after lie, and that has never, ever happened in American politics before.
You know, you were talking about the different networks before, and as I see it, CNN, Biden and Harris, Fox, Trump. You know, and...
yeah, but Fox not so much anymore. I see that Trump took another round out of them yesterday. He has not... except in the very beginning, he never courted that. He never courted anybody. I think that's one of the things to his credit. Now, Fox did step in to support him because everybody else was on the other side. So when everybody's on the other side, if you want somebody to notice you, you become a contrarian. And so Fox did become contrarians and stayed that way until, well, you know, a couple of years ago when things started to go sideways all over the place. But if you... Again, people don't have to believe me when I say this, but I work very hard to be objective about the news. I spend, as I said, a couple hours a day at least, and then another couple hours on the internet corresponding with friends all around the world mostly about politics. And I don't think there's any question in any rational person's mind that the Democratic National Committee effectively owns the American media. I don't mean necessarily dollars and cents, but in terms of what is said, they control it. I mean, I've seen it so many times in the last 8 years. You'll see and I get them. I'm plugged into a lot. I get a lot of information from press releases and so on from the DNC and the RNC, and you'll see them come out and say, okay, thus and such, and say, you know, Joe Blow's losing his hair, and that's a big news story today. And within an hour, 24 hours, every left-wing news outlet that talks about Joe Blow says Joe Blow's losing his hair.
Jim, I've got to take my final break. Please stand by, X-Zone Nation.
Sure.
Jim Chapman is my guest, jimchapman.ca. And we'll both be back on the other side of this break. Don't go away.
Without you, there'd be no sun. What I feel, I can't say. But my love is there for you anytime of day. It's all love that you need, and I'll try my best to make everything succeed. Tell me what is my life like to love?
And welcome back, everyone. This is the final segment of this hour's show, the first hour here on the X-Zone. But you know what? Right after the top of the hour break, we have another hour with another exciting guest as the X-Zone continues from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. And you're listening to us on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, Talkstar Radio Network, Mutual Broadcast Network, and in Niagara as well as Toronto on your hometown radio, Classic 1220, streaming classic1220.ca. Jim Chapman is our special guest, www.jimchapman.ca. We've talked about the American political scene, Jim. Now, a couple of days ago in Parliament, there was a vote of non-confidence. Prime Minister Trudeau was able to rally the NDPs and another party. They remain in power. What was your take on the vote of non-confidence by Mr. Poilievre?
Well, I think Pierre had no choice. He had to kind of put his foot down. after the NDP said we won't support the Liberals anymore, he was, I think, forced to show the Canadian public what a bunch of two-faced liars the NDP leadership are. They had no intention of abandoning Trudeau. They made a big show of it because there is some delusion. And again, I know people in all of these parties fairly high up. There's a fairly serious delusion among the NDP leadership that they might actually be able to win a federal election. That they built up a lot of goodwill on the part of Canadians by forcing the Liberals to do this, that, and the other thing. The problem is when you look at what the other thing was and this and that, they really didn't do much at all. Okay, the dental plan and, a few things like that. But basically the Liberals are a spent force. I don't think we'll see the government fall at least until we get fairly close to next October, which is the next scheduled election. I think one of the biggest mistakes Canada ever did was to put fixed terms in. I think they should have left it the way it was, that if you lost the confidence, well, it's still, technically, if you lose the confidence, you're gone. But Trudeau can just say to the NDP and to the Bloc, after this election, Poilievre is leading by 20 points. He's going to kill all of us. So, let's hope that we can turn it around in the next year. I don't think it's even remotely possible that they'll turn it around. And I don't say that as a supporter of any of the parties, of pox on all their houses, but I think that politics is cyclical. The Liberals have had their turn, had their go. In my lifetime, I have never seen a prime minister vilified the way Trudeau is. Not even close, ever. Even Mulroney at the end of his reign, when he was just pretty much despised, they never said half the kinds of things they say about Trudeau. And prior to him, there was nobody really who ever got on the bad side of most of the Canadians, even Trudeau Senior, when he lost some of his popularity. But nobody ever attacked him for being stupid, for being out of touch, politically in the wrong place, maybe. So I think it's just a matter of time we will see a Conservative government, and whether they will be able to put us onto the path that they think we should go on remains to be seen.
A couple of days ago, Premier Ford was giving a talk at a construction site. I forget which one it was, and somebody talked about the homeless situation, and he said, "Hey, if you're homeless, get off your ASS and get a job."
Well, I think we can look at that and go, "Oh, what a terrible thing to say." Mm-hmm. I think we can also look at it and say, from the point of view of what needs to be done in this province, the homeless problem, while it's a heart-wrenching problem and literally tugs at our heartstrings, and I think we should, as individuals, as I try to do, we should be involved in any way we can to try to help solve that problem. Yeah. I don't want Rob Ford wasting his money on that, not his money, I don't mean waste, I shouldn't say that. I think he needs to focus on more things. Healthcare has collapsed in this province. It's collapsed. No matter what they tell you, it has collapsed. In London, we have over 100,000 people with no family doctor and 400,000 people in the city. It's a disaster. Work on that, Rob. Never mind the rest of it.
Let's talk
Not
about...
only you, Robin, but Ford.
Yeah. I try and do my part with the homeless situation.
I'm sure that you do. Knowing you as I do, I'm sure that you do. I think we all do. We all feel bad about that. But for me, the overriding issue beyond everything has to be healthcare. Because at my age, I'm in and out of that system, and I see just how bad it is. Yeah. Doctors retiring, all the baby boomer doctors are moving out. Biggest problem is these guys work 70, 80 hours a week. The young doctors want to work 40 hours a week. Nothing wrong with that, but we should have been training 2 of them for every one that we had. We didn't do that. The NDP didn't do it. The Liberals didn't do it. The Conservatives didn't do it. And here we are now, where the City of London, a quarter of the people in London don't have a family doctor or primary care physician, and that is the key. That is the key position to keeping yourself healthy, particularly as you age, is having a family doctor who knows you, who knows about you, cares about you. Yeah. And a quarter of the people don't have one. In fact, the number's higher than that, but I'll say a quarter just so I'm safe. It's just awful, and every time I hear Ford talk about beer in the corner store, all of this other, Mickey Mouse vote jiggling stuff, I think you guys, you have lost the light. This is going to not destroy the province, but it is going to break and damage and hurt the province and millions of people in it because these guys looked the other way when they should have been, and it could have been fixed. It absolutely could have been fixed. It's almost too late now. We are too far down the rabbit hole. We can't get doctors. We can't bribe them to come here in anywhere sufficient numbers. I saw a story the other day. Most nurses are retiring, about 35, between 35 and 40. Majority of nurses are retiring, leaving the business because it's too stressful.
Yeah.
Not enough of them, right? How many times have we seen stories? Well, we had to lay off 100 nurses. We didn't have the money. I mean, to me, it just burns me. It riles me up. How many executives did you let go when you let those 100 nurses go? You have to look at those numbers. Now, in London, at LHSC, we've got a new guy up there, a new broom, and he's sweeping pretty clean, but even he is having problems because the government says, well, this is all the money you're going to get. Well, I, as a taxpayer, say, why is that all the money they're going to get? Where's the rest of my money going? I'm paying you guys huge amounts of money every year. I want to see health care. Number one priority. I don't care if the roads are, I really don't. I don't care if the roads are bad, other than to get the trucks where they need to go. But all of that other stuff can wait. 5 years, 10 years. The way you've made health care wait for 30 years, fix the damn health care system. Because I have friends who are dying because they can't get proper treatment.
And that is
sorry to get on my soapbox.
No, I agree with you 100%. Like, I'm in the same age bracket as you are, Jim. And I've been lucky enough to have had a great doctor for the last 15 years who is always on.
You too. Yep.
And she's always on top of my case. And
yes.
And it's great to have that kind of relationship with a doctor that you can trust. And when you see the amount of people that are waiting in an emergency ward to see a doctor, God bless them. Some of them wait over 36 hours in a corridor, on a stretcher. That should not be happening, not here in Canada.
I spent 6 hours in the waiting room the other day while my wife was in the back on a stretcher in the corridor because nobody had time to look at her. I sat there for 6 hours and nobody even came to tell me whether she was dead or alive because she went in an ambulance. It's unacceptable. But the politicians are still, we're doing this. Oh, we started a new medical school in Sudbury. Isn't that lovely? There won't be a graduate out of there for 6 or 7 or 8 years, guys. Come on. Get with the program. Now, if you want to do a barn burner of a program, have me back to talk about health care, because I know it inside, outside, upside, and downside. From way back when I started in radio, that was one of the things that really built my audience, was my focus on health care. And what's happened in this province is disastrous. There's only a couple of things that might get us out of it, and I don't think they're going to. I think we're going to see things the way they are now at twice as bad within 3 or 4 years, when the rest of the baby boomer doctors are gone, and there are no replacements. This is the thing. And the nurses, tougher and tougher and tougher job.
Yeah.
Like I said, a good percentage are leaving before they're 35, 40 years old. It's unsustainable.
Well, my wife is a retired nurse, and she was in the mental health ward in Hamilton Sciences. And God bless her, she would come home not only exhausted, but physically assaulted by some of the patients because, they really don't know what they're doing, God bless them. And this is the part of the medical industry that John Q. Public doesn't see unless they're part of it, or else they have somebody who's in, a patient. The government, they walk around with blinders on. The
vast majority of us are not patients at any given time. And if you're not a patient, if it's not an issue for you, we traditionally in this country and many other countries have said, well, whatever, sure, whatever you say. They don't pay attention to the news stories, like stories of your wife, stories of me spending the whole day in the ER, and what's going on. And they're repeated all over the place. But most people in Ontario, let's talk about Ontario, most people in Ontario are not in that situation. They're just not. On any given day, they're getting on with their lives, and they're hoping that if something does happen, that it's not as bad as they say. Well, it's worse than they say, and people find out too late, and it's almost too late now. It's ridiculous. It's just ridiculous.
It's so bad here in Niagara that at one of the hospitals, they actually put a CAT scan in the emergency ward to lessen the amount of time that emergency patients have to wait. Jim, we're going to have you back on for the pre-election. We're going to have you back on to do a complete barn-burning session on the Ontario healthcare. And you know what? We're going to have to talk about your book and your near-death experience.
Well, I'm happy to do that. If I can just suggest to people, if they go to my website, www.jimchapman.ca, there's kind of a capsule story on there, and they can order my book there if they're that interested. So I think it's a fascinating story. I've lectured about it all over North America, been invited to, and still doing that. So I think there's something there for anybody who's worried about what happens when the lights go out. Do they ever come on again? And it does not have a religious faith that gives you an answer. There are other answers out there.
Jim Chapman, I want to thank you ever so much, Jim, for joining us. It's always a great pleasure speaking to you, and I don't think I've ever thanked you for the mentoring and the lessons that you gave me as I was chewing my way up through the bones of the radio industry.
Well, I don't know how much of a mentor I was, Rob, but I always had great admiration for you and your courage, because it takes courage to do what you've done to build the kind of career that you have. I always admire your courage and your straightforwardness, and so I'm flattered that you would say that about me, but I think your success has been well-deserved. You're the one that put in the hard work.
Jim Chapman, thank you very much for your kind words. Take care, Jim, and as always, I look forward to the next time we speak, talking about the election, and the time after that about the healthcare situation here in Ontario. So until then, my friends,
I'll look forward to it.
Take care, Jim, and quickly, is your wife okay?
We'll find out.
Please get our prayers and light are coming to you and your wife.
All right, well, thanks, Rob. You take care now.
Take care, Jim. XO Nation, Jim Chapman has been my guest, a good friend of mine from my days at CJBK in London, Ontario. A beautiful city, great people. His website, www.jimchapman.ca. I'll be back on the other side of this brief break as hour number 2 of the X Zone starts right now.